So today's episode is actually for the spouses of our wholesaling entrepreneurs. But before we jump into today's episode, if you have not been to Next Level Wholesaling and you are looking to build a business that spits off cash month after month after month without your personal day-to-day involvement, go to nextlevelwholesaling.com and take the Next Level Wholesaling assessment. You know, one of my dreams when I was kind of tired and on the treadmill and going deal to deal to deal, I was like, I want more time. I want more free time. I want to make more money. I'm tired of this. And my mentor created this assessment actually for me. And so I decided that I was going to create it for you because that absolutely changed my life. So go to nextlevelwholesaling.com, take the assessment. It's going to be like 5 minutes. It's going to rate yourself in your business. And once you take it, you're going to realize, wow, what's the next thing I need to do to really get my business to that next level? So this episode is actually the second of two episodes. The first one focused on the entrepreneur and how to make your business and marriage thrive, together. And this one I thought, hey, what do entrepreneurs need from their spouses? And so if you're listening to this, you probably are the entrepreneur normally, right? Listening to this, and your spouse probably has not listened to this podcast. And so I would suggest that you guys listen to this together. Maybe you want to show them though, hey, this is not about me, but I'm also going to let them hear part 1 and part 2. So this one is again from the spouse perspective. Again, I'm going to make a couple assumptions here. Don't kill me for my perspective, right? Because this is how my marriage works. Also, 92% of our listeners are male. So I'm assuming that if you are listening to this and you are a male, you are the entrepreneur. And if you are married, right, then your spouse is just typically female listening to this. Okay, so let's talk about how to make your marriage and your wholesaling business thrive from the spouse perspective. So one of the things that you can do to really, really support your spouse, and I want to emphasize that, is for an entrepreneur who is married and who has kids, they have a lot of pressure on their shoulders. And in the first episode, I talked about taking 100% accountability and responsibility for making money and being the breadwinner. And again, this is the model that I use. Doesn't have to be your model, but I really, really, really enjoy the separate roles that I have in my house, where I have one breadwinner where I focus completely on bringing in revenue, and my wife focuses solely, at least in this period of time while our kids are still young, on homeschooling our kids and making sure that they are fed, and also making sure that she's molding amazing human beings during the day when I'm not there. So that enables me during the hours of 9 to 5 to really, really, really focus on making money. I can tell you now that if you're listening to this and you are a spouse, there is an end game of which the money will be coming in month after month after month, and you're making more money than you ever thought you would. And that your spouse, if they are listening to this podcast, has a lot more free time, and they are not chained deal to deal to deal to deal. And the profitability of the company is going up month after month after month. So now that you are, number one, financially free, but number two, that they also have some time freedom. So in the early years of the business, I was working a lot, but right now I typically work, in the totality of my businesses, and I run two, possibly three, if you consider education or my mobile home park business. An actual business in itself, but 3 distinct businesses. And so I work approximately 30 hours a week. In my wholesaling business, I work approximately 2 to 3 hours every single week. You can do that, if you implement what I talk about in this podcast. It'll take you, not that long, but 6 to 12 months, you can really, 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 really start to free up a lot of time and make a lot of money in the business. So today, I spend a lot of time with my kids at swim practice and taking them back and forth and coaching them both in life and in swimming, and going to swim meets on the weekend. And if we have a long weekend and if I want to go into work late, I have that freedom. I have a team of people around me to do that. And so the end game, right, is for your spouse to bring in enough money so you don't have to worry about money. You could do the things that you want to do, all the things that you dreamed about. You can live that life. But there's a building phase of which a entrepreneur needs the full and 100% support of their spouse. And so you want to talk about that end game and how you can support that. Next phase, I would say, is you want to set clear expectations on finances with your spouse. So I see a lot of people who come to me in private coaching and they talk about struggling financially and they're saying, oh, I just bought my wife a new car. And I scratch my head and I'm like, well, why did you buy your wife a brand new car when you're trying to build the business, right? And they say, well, and they got like $1,000 car payment. And by the way, this is like an epidemic among people, right? But also entrepreneurs. And so this is a bad financial decision. Now, if you're listening to this, hey, and you want to drive a Mercedes or a BMW or a Porsche, hey, look, I'm all for that. That is amazing. But there is a time where you need to support your spouse in bringing down your cost of living and reinvest back into the business, right? So Dave Ramsey talks about live like no one else today so you could live like no one else tomorrow. What does that mean? Well, whatever your friends are doing, pretty much do the opposite if they are living a middle-class lifestyle. So you want to set expectations of how money is spent in the household and also how money is spent in the business and reinvested. Because guess what? There's some risk. If you're listening to this, your spouse is going to have to invest $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month in marketing. And that has to come from somewhere while you build the business. There's a risk there. And there's a time where you're going to have faith where you invest that money and it doesn't come back for 60, 90, 120 days, right? But you got to understand this. I know that you can do this. I understand that if you plant this seed, right, you are going to reap a large harvest. So set clear expectations, both on personal spending and the investment in the business. Next, do not berate your spouse or talk about past failures. Your spouse, even if they get defensive, if you come at them this way, right, they already know these things. And so a great thing that a spouse can do is, again, reset expectations and give your 100% support. Now, entrepreneurs have their own set of expectations. And so if your entrepreneur husband has broken promises and lost credibility here, you can have them listen to episode 1, okay, of this 2-part series because there's some obligation here. But the biggest thing is an entrepreneur needs a 100% full support of their spouse. They need a shared goal. You want to remind him of who he is and be their number one fan. When I say you want to remind him of who he is, you don't want him to remind him of the worst version of himself. You want to remind him of the best version of himself. Build him up. Remind him he is the leader. He is the king of this household. Next, understand when his head is elsewhere, let's say in family events, or he's dealing with things, or he seems distracted, that he's got a lot of stuff going on, right? He's got a million problems, going on in his mind that you don't have to think about if he is working on the business, right? I got to tell you, there's probably, what is it, like 1,000 different things going on in a business at any moment. I mean, it's a lot. And so when a man can shield the spouse from all of those things and his head is a little distracted, just be a little more forgiving. Now, I understand that if you are a spouse, you want to be in a relationship with somebody, you want full attention. And I think that's really, really, really important. Maybe we could do another episode on that, but understand and have some compassion when his mind is elsewhere during family time. Next. You don't necessarily have to get involved in the business, but ask questions about it. Be curious. Buy him business books you think he would like. This is a signal that you are willing to reinvest into his entrepreneurship and that you have faith in him. When things get tough, remind him of the end goal and the end vision. Every man, every entrepreneur needs someone who is their number one fan, and that is their spouse, right? And let me put it this way: it better be their spouse, because that's the recipe of a strong marriage and also a strong business. So, next thing is support him in sacrificing spending in the building phase. You can get very, very, very creative on the things that you do together. You can live life very, very large, very, very cheaply. And I'm not saying you've got to sacrifice this forever, right? Our family lives pretty large on the things that we like to do, but there was a building phase where we sacrificed for many, many, many years. Okay. When he does do it, when he does have this success, tell him you never had a doubt and that you want him to do it again, and push that bar even higher. Tell him that this is just the beginning, that you know that this is just you're scratching the surface, and support him. So I'll summarize this episode. Decide on one goal with your spouse and get clarity with him or her. 2, talk about the end game. 3, set clear expectations about financing, what you guys are going to spend at home and how you're going to invest in the business. Do not berate or talk about past failures. Give your spouse 100% full support towards a shared goal. Remind him who he is, and that is the best version of himself, right? Not the worst version of himself. Be his number one fan. Understand that when his head is elsewhere, that he's got a lot going on and that he is shielding you from that. Next, buy him business books you think that he would like. Again, that's a symbol of an investment into him and your belief in him. Remind him of the end goal when things get tough and the vision. I think I mentioned sacrifice spending in the building phase. And when he does it, tell him you never had a doubt and that you want him to do it again at an even higher level. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Again, men, entrepreneurs, listen to episode 1. You've got an obligation. Maybe you could have your spouse listen to episode 2 of this. Of course, you want to treat your wife like gold. Take her out to a nice dinner. Talk about this episode and see what you guys can do together. This perfect partnership. I know this is not for everybody, this family dynamic, but it works well for us. So I thought that I would share it for you. So if you've not been to nextlevelwholesaling.com, take the assessment, and I'm telling you, your business will thank you. And I will talk to you on the next episode.